Hello, good morning, and welcome to this Archaeoscoop-ish carcast. I'm not driving along, so there shouldn't be any mishaps. I'm talking to you from the car today for two reasons. First of all, it's been a very long week in which I've spent pretty much every waking hour helping to finish constructing this crazy golf course for our local park. Went down very well last night, actually. Halloween was a wonderful evening here in Wallsend, and hopefully you had a good time too. But also as well, it's because I don't want to wake up Mrs. Soup, because she's still recovering from her illness and hurt ankle. And I really wanted to talk about this news story. I didn't just want to wait until next week, so I'm in the car to talk about it. It's a news story which has broke over the course of the week. First of all, in a magazine, or sort of a news blog, as it were, called Vocative. And then an article in The Independent, to which I'll put links below both of these articles. It's to do with Zahi Hawass, or Dr. Zahi Hawass, and his dealings with the National Geographic, or rather, the National Geographic's dealings with Dr. Zahi Hawass. The US Justice Department are probably investigating the National Geographic to do with their payments to Dr. Hawass over the past 10 years or so, linked with gaining unfair advantage in their field abroad. You see, there are laws in the US which stop companies and corporations paying government officials from other countries sums of money in order to gain a monopoly in that part of the world. So, for example, according to The Independent, Walmart are being investigated for doing something similar in Mexico. And in this instance, it seems that the Dr. Hawass has been accepting payments in the form of, as he puts it, contracts of between $80,000 and $200,000 per year in order to afford the National Geographic access to the Tutankhamun exhibit, the pyramids, and other key sites in Egypt. And as The Independent points out, this has been a linchpin of their expansion, for example, into the National Geographic television channel. Access to these sites and monuments has really helped them because they are fan favourites, as it were. That people who love archaeology and people who just have a casual interest love these things, and therefore they're very good to show on TV if you want to try and launch your history channel or your National Geographic channel. So it's all revolving around this practice of paying Dr. Hawass for access to these sites and monuments. Now, on the surface, he's quite right. It could just be a contract. He said he made a contract, and that he is above bribery. He sort of said, "No one can bribe me," he told Vocative. "I'm the most famous Egyptologist." But I suppose that's the point there. With Dr. Hawass, there is this weird relationship between professional and upstanding behaviour, integrity, and being famous, being the most famous archaeologist, as it were, or Egyptologist in this case. He's very much for a long time pushed the image of being a real-life Indiana Jones. In fact, I can't remember a news article that's had him in for a long time that hasn't started out saying, "The real-life Indiana Jones, Dr. Zahi Hawass, has blah, 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 blah." He's confirmed the existence of a new king, this kind of thing. And in that sense, it feels a little bit as though there probably is something to this story, and therefore, I thought I wanted just to log my thoughts on it. There's been no secret that for quite a long time, access to ancient Egyptian sites, monuments, and artifacts has been a bit more complicated than it otherwise should be. The Department of Antiquities in Egypt does exist, obviously, to protect those sites and monuments because people want access to them. And Egypt has had a very unfortunate history of people, especially from places like Britain, like France, like the US, Germany, so on and so forth, taking artifacts from Egypt and keeping them in their own museums. Famously, for example, the Nefertiti bust in Germany. So the department does exist legitimately in order to protect these sites and to monitor access to them. But it's been no secret that for a good long while now that Zahi and his personality, his big man status, as it were, have really, in some ways, overtaken process, or rather very much influenced process within the department. Such that Egyptologists that I've spoken to personally, face-to-face conversations, but I wouldn't record these conversations because I don't want to get them in trouble, they have said that they needed to be on the right side of Zahi Hawass, otherwise they wouldn't be able to get their job done. They wouldn't be able to go into Egypt and do archaeology without being on the right side of this man, not of the department. And that's the balance which it feels a bit as though it was going a bit too far one way. Well, not even one way or the other, but one particular way. And in many ways, it means that it's not remotely surprising that the National Geographic has had to pay Zahi personally, essentially, for access to sites. Now, he goes on to say that it's linked with making books and making films and this kind of thing. He was being paid for his time in that sense. But it's very strongly hinted that this is also to do with access. If they hadn't paid him, they wouldn't have got in to these sites almost exclusively, as it were. So it's been no secret that this has been this state of play for quite a while in Egypt, and in some ways it's a bit of a relief to see it being investigated and talked about, because it's made other archaeologists, or many archaeologists rather, very uncomfortable. Some feel have felt rather as though it's just just the way it is. You just have to get along with Zahi if you want to do archaeology in Egypt. But others have felt extremely uncomfortable with certain elements of his practice, with how he presents ancient Egyptian archaeology, and also, frankly, actually, with the protectionist and nationalistic bias which have been afforded to ancient Egyptian studies in recent years, especially under his reign. So in some ways it feels like there's a slight catharsis here in this actually starting to be looked at and talked about. Now I'm talking about all these things because I'm logging, I suppose, the emotions and thoughts which are certainly amongst my friends and the people that I work with and know, in order that you guys, maybe who aren't archaeologists, maybe read this story so that you know a little bit more about the sort of the cloud surrounding it. I'm not necessarily making a judgment on Zahi Hawass. I mean, I don't know the full story. How could I? I'm not an Egyptologist, and I'm certainly not the man himself. But it's certainly a big story in terms of archaeology, and therefore I felt the need to make an Archaeoscoop-ish video covering it. So do read the news stories, do have a bit of a think about this, and also if you have any thoughts, actually, either to do with integrity in archaeological practice, with access to other countries and their monuments, or actually to do with the man himself and what you think he's done rather for ancient Egyptian studies over the past decade or so, please do comment below. I'd love to read them. But as I say, crucially, I'm not just going to town on him. I'm not just attacking the man here. Rather, I'm trying just to log the full spectrum of thoughts surrounding him, because in some ways, to some people, this is a very surprising story, but to others, it's not that surprising at all, really. So there you go. Now, for those news stories, those two articles, that news story and all the other news stories for the past week or so, please do check out the links as ever in the video information. Enjoy reading them, and until next time, take care. Bye-bye.